now, which I always say out loud because I'm prone to forget, so you all know I didn't, those of you who know my history. And I'm going to start sharing my screen very briefly. So thank you for joining us today for what is our 20th session in the COVIDeo series. So, and on May Day, and I can't imagine a more appropriate day for Ed and Sohnie to have joined us than May Day. And we're going to be getting with them in just a moment. And our topic today, being mutual aid and organizing. Just a little housekeeping real quick first. Video, if you can be on video, it's lovely. It really does enrich the conversation, especially in sessions like today, which are going to be very conversational. We're not going to keep a lot of PowerPoint in your face today. So if you can be on screen, it enriches the experience. If you can't, we understand. Mute if you're not speaking. It really, really helps. We haven't had too many issues with this. And if I see that there's an issue and you're not noticing you're unmuted, I can also mute you. So this call is being recorded. Do you keep that in mind with what you share? It will be shared publicly so others can learn from it, which is awesome. You can share it with your other board members and organizers, but it just means sometimes we wanted to remind people that what you share will be out in the public. Check-ins, as I said, is just going to be the list of co-ops. We'll go down those real quick before we get started. And just the reminder that we're trying to stay focused and on topic and really spend this time taking in the knowledge and information and experience from our speakers. So if you have a specific situation you want to talk about in more depth, please contact us at FCI, and we are happy to make time to chat via email, via phone call, whatever you'd like to do more in depth about your issue. But if you hear us saying, hey, we could talk after the call about that, please respect that. All we mean is we'd love to talk with you, but we want to focus on our speakers. All right, so I'm going to real quick check who we're going to go through who's here on the chat before I turn it over. So I've got Mad River Market here, Winsted, Connecticut, and Kim is here from Market 166 in East Point, Georgia. Paso Food Co-op, Lydia from Paso Robles, California. Ann's here from Whitewater Grocery Co. up in Whitewater, Wisconsin. And Catherine, oh, hi Catherine, is here from Bay City Cooperative Market in Michigan. And Matt, oh hi Matt, from Gem City Market in Dayton, Ohio. If you've joined us and haven't got a chance to put your information yet in the chat, please do that. Oh, hi. Artist, am I saying that right? Can you unmute for a second? Dalue? Can you say that for me? Artist Collective? No? Okay. I apologize. I'm terrible.
Datule.
Datule, thank you. I appreciate the help because I'm not good at it.
Well,
Datule Artist Collective from Little Rock, Arkansas. Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
More friends of mine.
Ah, got it. And Kat's here from Electric City Food Co-op in Schenectady, New York. And Malik is with us. Hello, Malik from Detroit People's Food Co-op. All right. Thank you for checking in with the chat. Just to keep in mind, I have checked in with our speakers and they said they'll let you know when they're taking questions, and it's fine to just unmute and ask questions. If there's too many people in the room and we get some piling on, we might move to the chat, or if you want to put your comments in the chat or say you'd like to be in the stack, feel free to do that. I'll keep an eye on the chat too. But just to respect how the speakers would like to run this session, they've said they will indicate when they're taking questions, and feel free to unmute and just talk with them. Okay, so our speakers today are Sohnie Black and Ed Whitfield from Fund for Democratic Communities. Those of you who've been working with startup food co-ops for a while may know them best from the Renaissance Community Co-op in Greensboro, North Carolina. And they are specifically with Fund for Democratic Communities, and we are very lucky Sohnie is actually on the board of FCI, so we also appreciate her work there. They're going to be talking to you today about understanding the relationship between emergency relief efforts and your ongoing work to develop your co-op, and how that can affect your long-term objectives for your co-op and your community and actually strengthen your overall work. And I am going to stop sharing my screen and mute and turn it over to Ed and Sohnie.
Okay. Good morning. I guess it's morning everywhere, yes, even on the West Coast where it's early in the morning. I feel so sorry. I'm Ed Whitfield with the Fund for Democratic Communities, and I'm here with my colleague, Sohnie Black. And we talked a little bit about what might be useful to people. And we thought that spending some time talking about organizing would be really important, because the organizing that some of us are doing as mutual aid work right now um, can only be thought of as an incredibly powerful aid to any future organizing we do when we're in a better position to work directly on some of the things connected with building the cooperatives we're involved with. So, we're in this weird pandemic situation that I don't know that anybody imagined as quite the situation we were going to be in, but this is the situation we're in. And this is the one we have to figure out what to do with. Um, I told somebody once that, I've been expecting some kind of crisis. And it's like somebody said, well, can you build a birdhouse? And it's like, of course I can build a birdhouse. And then they asked me, well, can you build a birdhouse while you're blindfolded with your hands tied? And it's like, oh, that takes a little more thought, a little more consideration. But I bet you we're creative enough to continue to build our birdhouses, even with our blindfolded and with our hands tied, because we're incredibly creative human beings. And there's special tools that might be required, but we're tool makers. So I want to talk about one of those tools, which is organizing. I'm going to say a little bit first, then I'm going to turn it over to Sohnie, then I'm going to say a little bit more, and we'll open it up to questions. First, I wanted to say, as a preamble to all of this, that there are three kind of potential cooperative development models that should guide us to understanding where we are now. And the three models I'm talking about there's a capitalist model, which is, it's all about the surplus. It's like, how can we build something that has the biggest amount of profit? And I've actually heard food co-ops talk about their work in that way. It's like, we want to make sure that our profit is good so that we can return a lot of it as patronage or whatever we're going to do, but it's about the surplus we can generate. Then there's a charity model, which is, how can we do something for those terrible poor people who have awful food and can barely, survive and stay healthy? We're doing something for them. And then there's a mutual aid model, which is, it's rooted in solidarity. It's like, we're all in this together. We all need good food. What we can build, the problem we identify is a joint collective problem. This is a all of us kind of situation. And a lot of our other work we're engaged in now is mutual aid. And I hope that continues to spill over into the cooperative development work that we're doing in an ongoing way. And it might seem obvious, but that's actually not all that obvious, and not everybody does that. There are any number of people that do have charitable models of what it is they're trying to do. There are other people who actually have, essentially, it's about the surplus, it's about the profit models of what they're doing. And we need to make sure that our organizing work is rooted in a mutual aid kind of thing, which means that this is a good time to practice. It's a good time to think about what that actually means. And it's a good time to do things that will spill over into whatever we're able to do later. This blindfolded, hands-tied approach is rooted in the something a lot of people are calling social distancing, but I think that's been misnamed given the existence of Zoom. It's really physical distancing that is being engaged in order to keep people safe from transmitting this very virulent and deadly virus in this pandemic. And we need to make clear that we're engaged in physical distancing and not social distancing, that we don't break those social ties and social connections that are really the lifeline of us, even as we remain physically distant, which means that all the kind of communication methods we're able to use need to be brought to bear. And that's really, really important. I noticed some time ago, I wrote a piece called, some democratic organizing methods that I think that, when we get to the question and answer, I'm going to be kind of drawing from. It's an essay I wrote in 2002, as best I can remember. So at some point, I would be willing to share it, even though it's gotten dusty and I hadn't brought it out in quite a while. But with that brief introduction, I'd like to let my colleague Sohnie talk about the role that organizing has to, Sohnie likes to talk about 3 things you need to do: organize, organize, and then the third one is you should organize. So I'm going to turn it over to Sohnie to talk about organizing as it relates to food co-ops and a lot of the mutual aid work that she has been doing recently. Sohnie?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sohnie Black, and as Ed said in his introductions, I work with Ed at the Fund for Democratic Communities, and we were the technical assistants for the RCC, the Renaissance Community Co-op project. So yes, Ed is absolutely right. You know, one of the things I like to close with is to remind everybody, organize, organize, organize. And as Ed said, that may seem like an obvious thing to do when we're trying to start cooperatives, especially grocery cooperatives. But surprisingly, and this was my experience with the RCC too, we also know that cooperatives are businesses. And so we're all pretty familiar with business models and the things you have to do to make a business successful. You know, we all know those things. So we know you've got to have a client base. So whether that's a community, you know, geographically or internationally or whatever, you know, you've got to do that. You know, you've got to be looking at the bottom line and your money, cash flow, things of that nature. You've got to have good management to be able to run the cooperative. We know all those things. And if we don't know them, there's a plethora of information out there that we can easily access to find out how to do that and what we should be doing. What's hard to find out there is the part that's crucial to cooperatives, which is organizing. It's working with the people in the community and not just selling your business. It's a little bit different, a cooperative, because people make the difference. People make the difference. So it's a little bit different than any other traditional business because you're not just selling the idea and getting people to buy in. We're actually talking about people having to have a need. And as we know with grocery stores, there are a ton of them out there now. So competition is stiff. So we've got to make this important. We've got to make our cooperative important to people and matter to people. And that's where the organizing comes in. That's the people part of the whole model. And it's, again, about getting out there, connecting with folks, making real and deep connections. And of course, providing food, especially in a food desert, is a need. But again, I can't emphasize enough, 9 times out of 10, that need was being met before your cooperative came along. And people have gotten in the habit of getting food from wherever and however they were getting it. So creating cooperatives in food deserts, even though it seems like a piece of cake, it's very hard because you're actually having to help people break old habits. So that's the importance of organizing. Mutual aid, which is beautiful. I love the way Ed laid out that whole piece of the 3 different types of work you can do with cooperatives. And a lot of people, especially in hard times like these, are accustomed to charity. We all want to, we want to help each other. And those of us that are better situated to help people that are, you know, having the hardest struggle and the most need, it's very easy to think about it going one way. What can I do? What can I help? How can I help? The beauty of the mutual aid model is that we firmly believe that everybody has something to offer. So if I've lost my job, I don't have a lot of money, I need help with food, I need help paying rent, it's wonderful if there are organizations and agencies and foundations that can help me with that. But also, I as an individual have something to offer as well. And remembering that, opening that up to people, asking them what they have to offer, how they can help, is a beautiful way to steer clear of the charity model of giving. It empowers people and reminds them that they're a valuable member of our community and that we recognize that. And it also helps kind of get us out of that mindset of we're giving, again, that one way that we're able to do, and forgetting that everybody has value and something to offer our community. So it's been very exciting for us in the last few weeks, as the COVID crisis, you know, was reaching ahead, and more and more people were losing their jobs. We knew in Greensboro and across the country, obviously, there was a tremendous need. And so as our organization, F4DC, was trying to figure out how do we respond to this, we began to become aware of people around the country and in our city as well doing these mutual aid efforts. And just for clarity's sake, I wanna talk about what we consider mutual aid to be. Again, it's the idea that we help one another. So I may have something that you need, but you certainly have something that I or this community can benefit from. So again, it's a two-way street. It's not charity in one way. And it's fabulous because this mutual aid fund that we helped to organize, those are some of the founding principles upon which we organized it. And it's been a beautiful thing to see in action, because as I've had the privilege of being able to talk to a lot of the folks that we've helped. And when you were kind of going through the questionnaire, trying to get some sense of what their needs are, it's wonderful when we get to the portion of the questionnaire where we ask, how are you able to give back? And for a moment, people are kind of taken aback because, you know, all of us are kind of afraid. This is new territory for us. We're trying to focus on survival, especially people that have lost their job or source of income, you know, things of that nature. So when somebody asks you what you can give, my experience has been that for a moment, people will stop. You know, they'll just kind of stop. And then we have a list of some ideas, you know, we offer people. Are you able to babysit? Are you able to prepare meals? Are you able to transport someone? Are you able to pick up medicines or groceries for someone? But then there's this other category. And it's been fabulous to see the light bulb go off in people's heads as they begin to think about, hey, well, yeah, there were some elders that were in a apartment community that was for elderly folks. And when we got to that part of the questionnaire, for a moment, a lady paused and then she said, well, you know, I know most of the people that are here on my floor, even if we aren't particularly close. She said, you think maybe it would help if I called and checked in with them, just a wellness check? And I was like, absolutely, absolutely. That would be a great thing to do for your neighbors. So that's just an example of one of the ways that, you know, the light bulb goes off over people's heads and they begin to think about, hey, this is how I can help. One of the other things I want to say is that this is nothing new. You know, mutual aid is old as time. You know, I think about Jessica Gordon Nimhart's book, Collective Courage. And one of the things that she talks about there, and this dings with me because I remember my grandmother and her neighbors and what a big deal funerals were. You know, when one of the neighbors would die, funerals were, and sometimes it was a struggle for families to be able to pay for funerals. And I remember my grandmother and our other neighbors would sometime, if they learned a neighbor was having a hard time, they would collect money to help the family out, pay for a funeral. So again, mutual aid is just that. And when in Jessica's book, she talks about that very thing, that years ago, there were mutual aid groups so that individuals, primarily in the African-American community, but I'm sure this applied to other communities as well, would every month, there would be money that you would put into a kitty specifically to help pay for funerals in case someone in that group or in that family group died. And so again, mutual aid, everybody puts something in and everybody is able to take something out as needed. So I'm going to pause there and I'll toss it back to Ed.
Yeah, I want to tie in some of what Sohnie is saying about mutual aid in general to cooperative. It's pretty clear to me that the basic mindset about the development of both is the same. That if we look at the definition, you know, a lot of times we just talk about the 7 principles without going back all the way back to the definition of cooperatives. That is when a group of people identify a problem and then they build an enterprise to help them solve that problem that's jointly owned and jointly controlled by them as a group of people for their mutual benefit. So, you know, mutual aid is for a community to recognizing a problem, develop whatever structures and activities are necessary to be able to help them meet that problem for their mutual benefit. And while it's not a mutual aid, typically is not a for-profit business, and cooperative certainly can be that. The fundamental mindset of it, again, this mutual aid mindset, as opposed to it's all about the surplus or it's all about helping somebody else. You know, it's what it's rooted in. I also want us to think about organization as a tool. And a lot of times you talk about power building. To me, the essence of organizing is, first of all, to help people recognize and develop a collective joint understanding of a problem that they face, and then help them develop the power to do something about it. And that power to do something about it is typically organization. And I like to think of power imbalances as almost always being related to some differential in the access to and skill with the use of tools. And somebody heard me say that, so why are you talking about tools? I'm going, because tools are things that people use to amplify their power. And obviously, if two different people, they may be differently located and in a natural state have difference in power. But with the appropriate tools, whoever's got the best tools is the one who has the most power. And organization is one of those tools. If we fight a war, tanks and battleships are tools. But we're building businesses, so organization is a key tool to do this. Communication skills are tools that we use in the course of building our organizations, which are tools. But I just want us to really understand that organizer is an organizer is building a tool in a community, which is an organization of people that has sufficient amount of power to get done what they need to do. So the two pieces of organizing are, one, help to develop a collective understanding of what the problem is, and then help to build the tool that's required to solve that problem. So we had to build a special sensor device to make a birdhouse where you're blindfolded and your hands are tied, but whatever it is the tool we have to have. So right now, for instance, we probably aren't out knocking on doors. I hope you all are not out knocking on doors. Anyway, since you're not out knocking on doors, you can certainly be making phone calls. You can be sending text messages. You can be talking about all of the kinds of ways that you want to get people, and you can be asking questions. An incredibly important part of the organizing tool is the willingness and real curiosity that the organizer has of understanding how other people see the situation that they're in. In this thing I wrote, I talk about it in terms of you want to seek to include people so that you understand and unleash their creative ideas. That's very, very important part. So for every enterprise we're talking about creating, we really, really want to be unleashing the ideas of as many people as possible and helping to join them together. Another point I want to say is, do not be afraid to say, I don't know. Now, almost all of us are capable of filling in the blanks. When you actually don't know something, you can put something in there and you can say something. But the utility of saying you don't know is it helps other people say, oh, you don't know, well, maybe we can figure this out together, as opposed to pretending that you do know, and often passing off bad information as the truth and damaging other people's ability to be creative and thoughtful and engage in figuring that out. Another point I want to make is that we need to seek we need to find the opportunity in every event. So this is an event that doesn't actually have all that many good sides to it. But if it slows us down from doing something that we were doing too fast, if it gives us opportunity to pause and reflect and contemplate things when we had been rushing headlong along, let's take that as an opportunity. If it gives us a chance to know some other people in our community in the course of doing mutual aid work, we can later draw them into something else, then that's an opportunity. So it's an idea of everything is a new opportunity. And after the shock and awe and being stunned by, oh, I didn't expect this to happen, then start looking for the opportunity. It's like, yeah, but this is an opportunity to do something that we didn't have the opportunity to do before. I see my friend Malik Yakini sitting here, and he and I both know that opportunity like this is an opportunity to do some woodshedding. Musicians need opportunities when they're not being urged to go off and perform out for somebody else, to just kind of stay off by themselves and reflect and do some of the work that they need to do. I mean, just over and up. You never finish doing it. You never learn enough. And so woodshedding is an opportunity. So in addition to the work of thinking about this and doing webinars, I'm sitting up trying to play music every chance I get and learning whole new instruments and building stuff. So woodshedding is an opportunity, but you can woodshed co-op development. You know, you can take your co-op development and use the fact that you're not able to build some of the things that you would be able to do if there weren't a pandemic, and use it to refine some ideas on the one hand, to build tighter organization. I will venture that the hardest part of co-op development is the organizing work. That a lot of other things seem like they're hard, but if you do the organizing work deep and hard enough, it makes everything else go easier, because again, you're building a powerful tool. And it's easy to cut short on that piece of the work because there's so many other things that are confronting you and time schedules and stuff. And this is a chance and an opportunity to slow down and engage in some things that you might not otherwise be able to do. Another point I'd like to make about organizing is that you need to reconcile yourself to and be at ease with the natural rhythm of communities and individuals. Understand that there are natural processes of development and there are natural rates at which things develop. And we can always want to rush things, and that would be our tendency. But we have to, somebody talks about, you know, organization develops at the speed of trust. So the trust building, you know, is an important component of our organizing work. And it has a certain rhythm to it that's quite frankly beyond our will. And I'm not at all for slowing down anything slower than it has to be. I'm just saying that recognizing that there are rhythms of things. There's a time to do physical distancing, and then there's a time to go back, I'm sure. Now, there's some folk who want to rush. Let's all go back to work. Everybody go get your nails done and your hair done and a haircut. And let's hurry up and open, like, no. Let's open the beaches, like, no. There's a time for everything. And this is probably not the time for that. There are horror stories coming out of places with large concentrations of people that folks just need to be thinking about when they understand the devastating effect that this can have. And we ought to be using this, again, as an opportunity to prepare for a time when we're able to do more things together, but then understand that, you know, recognizing that natural rhythm is an important part of what we have to do. That's kind of it on stuff I wanted to say, you know, going forward. I think, you know, pay much attention to what, sometimes you can think you have something organized and you can have a certain level of organization and it is insufficient for the task. So I just want us to realize that it's like, oh, we've already done that. You know, we've got some people together and we had a meeting once. It's like, no, this needs to be a deep understanding, a deep collective understanding that's widespread and broad of the complexities of the problems that we face. And it also needs to be coupled with a deep and powerful organizational structures that are required, that build into them the trust building work that has to be done, that build into themselves the ways of unleashing the ideas and creativity of the many, because our collective ideas are always better than our individual ideas because they include them. You know, in other words, every time I go into a room, it's smarter than anything I can do before I get to the room, because there are more people there who have additional experiences, additional insights, additional processing power that make our collective knowledge and wisdom greater than any of our individual knowledge and wisdom can possibly be. And if you think about democracy, one aspect of democracy, I'm going to end with this, is thinking together. And understand that when we think together, it is always more powerful and more brilliant than all of our individual capacity to think. And that goes for our work in developing cooperatives and meeting the needs within our communities that include us all. So that's what I want to say on the straight up. And now I hope we have some questions and answers, and y'all can ask me some questions so hard that I go, I get a chance to say, I don't know.
You know what, there are a few more things that I want to say, Ed, just building upon what you said, and I'm going to be short. One of them is it's community building. You know, the whole idea of mutual aid as part of organizing is really about building community, because before, community in a sense of we was an option. It was an option. I cannot imagine at this juncture being able to make it and not relying on other people, my neighbors, my colleagues, people that I am actually working out here in the community with. So now it's a necessity. It's not a luxury anymore. And I think that's important because, again, that's going to be crucial for your organizing work. We have the opportunity to create this very deep sense of we. And so this is a great time for doing that. Building trust too. With mutual aid, there's a sense of trust. And you're building trust because I'm trusting you with this money to go get groceries for me. I'm trusting you with this information to get my prescription. I'm trusting you to come into my home to take, I'm sharing this information with you about what my needs are. And I'm trusting you to handle that delicately, to respect me, to treat me with respect and dignity, and also to help me in this process. So that's very valuable. I also want to say it's been fascinating because, of course, we're all used to meeting in rooms with one another. And with social distancing, you're not able to go door to door. So connecting with your neighbors to find out what their needs are got a little hectic there for a minute because it's like, oh my gosh, I can't go door to door. I can't canvass. I can't call a meeting. Even posting a flyer, you don't know who's going to see it. And then what happens from, you're not going to post a flyer and have a meeting. So this older mode of technology called the phone, and using that in the way we used to use it. So not just sending a text or being able to Zoom on your phone, but actually having to develop phone trees. One of the things that we're talking about doing in my neighborhood now where I live is phone trees, because I know some of the people on my block, and some of those people know some of the other people on the block that I don't know. And so if I'm able to call my neighbors on my block and say, hey, we're trying to figure out who in our neighborhood has some needs, who can benefit from this, the mutual aid effort that we're doing. I have your phone number. Let me find out what some of your needs are. But also, do you have phone numbers for other people on the block? Do you have a way of connecting with them? So a phone tree, an ancient means of technology, but now has taken on a whole brand new meaning. And I love it because what I know about organizing is that some of what we've done in the past, which is mobilizing and galvanizing. So we'll do an email blast, or we'll do a text blast, and we get it right. It comes somewhere and do something. And then after that moment is gone, everybody goes back home and goes back to what they were doing. Not really deep organizing. That's mobilizing and galvanizing. But we have the opportunity now to do deep organizing. So we're coming together around something, mutual need, and then we're continuing to work together and to stay together and to build this bond. And as Ed said, figure out this need that we have and how all of us collectively meet that need or solve that problem is a beautiful thing. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Q&A.
All right, everyone. Kim, I can see you talking and you're unmuted, but I'm not hearing you. Are others hearing her? No. Okay, not hearing you. It doesn't seem to be on our side. I'm sorry. Because you're right, you're unmuting, but we're still not hearing you.
Type your question into the chat if you could.
Yeah.
If you can use the chat.
Yeah. And if folks get a chance when you ask questions to remind people what co-op you're with, the people have appreciated that. So, and Kim's with Market 166. I won't make her type that. Okay. So I don't know if everyone's reading along, but Kim is saying she loves the concept of reaching out to people in person because there's so much value in the personal connection of a call, harder to ignore than a social media post and more active than a text.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Kim. It's interesting because, and again, this is something I knew, but using modern technology in the ways that we do, there's something very hard to resist about a person's voice on the other end of that phone. And so when we were organizing for the RCC, of course, email blasts will go out for meetings, but our experience was when we would get on that telephone and make phone calls and call people, and that was a lot, but people showed up, people came, and they would bring people with them. So it is hard to resist that voice on the other end of the phone.
I don't want to jump in if others want to jump in. I have a question, but anyone else want to unmute right now and ask a question? All right, I'm going to take advantage. I'm going to ask mine. Then you guys can jump in after me. So start formulating those questions. What we've heard this from some of the best startup organizers, the most successful startup co-op organizers have said exactly. They have used phone trees, have connected to people by call. What we hear from a lot of startups is people seem very resistant to that. We won't get people to pick up the phone. That isn't going to work. I don't know that they're actually trying it. Do you have any thoughts to share back to that? Because I think there's this belief that will not work, but we've actually seen successful organizers in all types of communities use that tool. But we do get a lot of resistance from startups feeling like people won't answer that phone. Any thoughts on that?
My guess is they haven't tried it. And actually, all of us are wary of all these telemarketers and unknown phone calls and don't necessarily answer. So it's useful that you have people who know people call, because we almost all have caller ID that pops up. So some people who know some people, have the people call the folks so that it's not an unidentified phone call. At that point, you might want to get the other person to list you as a contact so that when you directly contact them, it won't be an unidentified. But like you say, people who've been doing this for years know that it worked and it can continue to work, and it's more effective than the other forms. And there's a certain kind of, I'll say this, there's a certain kind of arrogance about, well, we know how to do Facebook and you don't know how to do Facebook. And so, of course, this is the way to organize. It's like, first of all, using Facebook is not all that hard. So even old people like me can use it. But I would rather talk to somebody when I need to talk to them than think that I should post something even to their private messenger account. A private messenger is what's really a mess. Anyway, Sohnie, you might want to add to that.
That's exactly what I would have said, that you want to begin with people that you know and have them connect you, or have them connect with people that they know.
I think that might be the missing element for a lot of people. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Others with questions? Comments?
Hi, it's Michaela from Sola Food Co-op in Los Angeles, California. It is early, so I'm not showing my face because I'm not camera ready. But to that end, I want to say thank you so much for this presentation. It's truly inspiring and such a good reminder of how we live our cooperative values, but also stay connected. We are planning a postcard writing campaign to check on our owners, and I think your idea of just the tree and just using the phone, like you said, to like check in on people and call people like old school style is, really important. And just everything that you've shared today is really appreciated. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I know Catherine from Bay City wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I'm making masks, but anyways, I find when I'm working with people, especially my board members, there's a preference for how you communicate with them. Some people want a text message, some people want a messenger message, and some people want a phone call. So I don't know if it would be helpful to ask people, how would you like to be contacted? And what are your abilities to be contacted? Because if I get a text message and I know the person that I have to talk to would prefer a phone call, then I can call them. Because I don't know, from my end, I find myself having to remember who to call, who to text, and who to messenger. And it can be very difficult at times when you're trying to juggle all of your contact people. So maybe that would help if they would give a preference to how they want to be contacted. And I'm sorry I missed part of the video because I had to leave the room, but I'll be looking forward to watching it again. Thank you.
That makes sense to me, and you might want to keep a list. You know, if the people that you're regularly in touch with, you might want to mark by their name what their preferred method of contact is and try to do that whenever possible. There might be some emergency situation where you would call somebody who would prefer a text or text somebody who would prefer a call. But in general, you want to remember that and keep that as part of your contact database, which can be, again, doesn't have to be on a computer. It can be written on a sheet of paper that you use right next to, you know, you carry around with your cell phone. So that makes sense.
That's right.
There are others that wanted to jump in? Questions? Comments?
I added another comment in. I love Michaela's idea. Is
You
this
see
better?
that out? It's perfect. Yeah. That was saying yay.
I switched computers and just rejoined you from the other one. I think that the idea of the postcard sounds so cool to me because it's personal, it's mail. And so I think, you know, there's just another way because usually, you know, as part of the co-op to ensure that people are in your community, you have their address. And so I'm definitely recommending that. We're doing a lot of social media and a lot of emailing, and we're switching into phone calls. And the postcard would just, I mean, it's a relatively efficient way. And of course, there's always the chance that you can say, hey, if you can send it from a person as opposed to signed Market 166 Co-op, but if it's actually from Kim, for example, you know, and if you're comfortable putting a phone number on a postcard, which I don't think is a big deal personally, but the idea would be, you know, feel free to give me a call if I can help with anything. So it still kind of has that personal, so you're not waiting for them to send you a letter back. Or an email, I guess. But I just wanted to shout out to Michaela. I think that's a really cute idea, especially when we kind of feel like we got away with that with social media, because I think it's more personal to have that handwritten note.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I'll just add to that really quick. Say that yes, they're going to be handwritten. So we have 13 board members and one part-time outreach and engagement coordinator. So that's like 14 of us. And I think we're definitely going to like we have 412 owners. So that's roughly about 30, you know, owners per person. And I also, like, at least for now, have this idea of like, you know, let's be responsible, like let one person be responsible for those 30 people, like really cultivating deep relationships. So while they may not know the entire board, they should really know, like, oh, Michaela like writes to me, she calls me, like I know I can connect with her about anything cooperative, you know, or what have you, you know. So that's kind of like where we're trying to go with this.
I have a question in terms of phone calls, postcards. What kinds of questions would you be asking? Some of us are more extroverted than others, and I think some people would like to have maybe some questions to ask to kind of get the conversation going.
It would depend on what stage of your development work you're in. And again, this isn't just to be doing it. Hopefully you'll be asking questions that you want to know. For instance, what kinds of things would you like to see in the store? I mean, again, it depends on where you are. It could be a store that's about to open. It could be a store that's already open. It could be a store that's just being conceptualized. If it's just being conceptualized, you know, everything from where do you want it to be, to how big should it be, to what color would you like it to be, do you want it to have delivery service, all of the things that you want to know to help you conceive of what it is you're going to do. That, to me, the questions that we ask people should help inform what we plan to do. That much of thinking is about what is it you're going to do. And so democratic thinking is when people think together about what it is that they're going to do together. And that has to do with the shaping and the conceptualizing of whatever this entity is, the shaping and conceptualizing of the problem, the shaping and conceptualizing of what kind of organization would most efficiently and effectively be the type of organization to use in solving the problem. So there's some experience that the cooperative world has in structures and bylaws and boards of directors and management teams, et cetera. And some of that experience will not change by the fact that somebody hasn't heard of it or hadn't thought of it before. But at the same time, there's a whole lot of stuff that people just don't know about a particular community and what the people in that community want. And so your investigation, again, depending on what stage of the development that you're in, and my contention is that at every stage in your development, you'll be doing organizing work. It's an ongoing part of the work. So that the refining, the improving of it, making necessary something called pivots, business pivots, when you have to change direction somewhat to make an operation more effective, more efficient. In some cases, to make it profitable at all, you would have to change direction. All of that requires, talking to people and asking them all of the different kinds of things that you know, again, depending on what stage in development you're in.
And I want to emphasize something. The organizing that happens around your co-op, it happens in every stage of development, and you never stop because people's needs change, forces outside of our control change. And so if there's a need that arises in a community that did not exist when the co-op opened, the co-op may be an avenue to resolve that and meet that need. And so you never stop organizing. You never stop checking in with people. You never stop bringing people together. You never stop asking those questions.
Let me give you another example that's connected with right now. We're in a pandemic. Everybody still needs to eat. There may soon be disruptions in the food supply chain. These are the actual situations that we're facing in every community that any of us are from right now. So we ought to be talking to people about what's the most, what would you like in terms of grocery delivery? Do you want to have to come in the store, or do you want us to be able to set up some process by which you can call in your order and we'll have it sitting on the curb and you can pull up to the outside and get it and, slide a credit card in and we'll slide it back to you. I mean, there are different things that you could be doing that help you match up with people's needs right now. Some stores have special hours for elderly shoppers who are more vulnerable. You might want to be talking to folk about would they like to do something like that. Some other people, there's some mandated, and this may go away soon, it's a question of the distancing, physical distancing people are asked to do inside of the store. And you might ask people about their experiences with that in case there's a need to refine how it's being done. Some stores have set up physical barriers, kind of plexiglass, plastic sheets in front of the cash register drawer. And if you haven't, you might want to consider doing it, but you also want to hear from people like, does this make you feel bad? Because it's kind of like going to a convenience store. You know how they slide you the money from behind a bulletproof glass. But that's not the intent at all, because these some of these little tiny viruses are more powerful than a speeding bullet. So, you gotta do what you gotta do to protect yourself. But so at every stage in development, there are things to talk about. Some of the things to talk about food co-ops are pandemic specific, that you could be engaging with people right now. If you haven't gotten one open yet, you can be thinking about what is the shape of retail in the future, retail to come. And again, when I said it's okay to say you don't know, realize that nobody exactly knows. And we're all trying to figure this out together, but certainly enlisting your community as part of that thinking together process, is a piece of what you're doing. And while we talked about individual phone calls, it's also possible to continue to use tools like Zoom to have, collective meetings where a number of people who are, particularly if you already have something that's moving along and you'd like to get more people together at one time. Just a conference call with 12 people on it where they can't see each other is pretty challenging. But Zoom, makes it a reasonable thing to have an actual meeting where people can raise their hand, talk about things, listen to each other. And, if your computer will support it, see each other's faces. So that's a useful tool that you might use in some of the organizing things that ask questions and investigate what people really want and need, and consequently the work people are willing to do together.
I want to make sure Janet, that you get a moment because you asked for it to be next in line. So Janet has a question for y'all.
I want to thank you for the idea of the mutual aid and everyone has something to offer, because we had a long conversation about, is it mutual aid or is it solidarity? When people don't have a job, they may not have all the resources that they need. Is it really mutual? So you have given me some ideas I can take back and say, yeah, it can be mutual, rather than using, some different terminology, honoring where people are at that time. And the whole idea that you have something to offer is just so important for everyone to feel, regardless of your situation. So thank you, Sohnie. Thank you, Ed.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Others with questions? I've got one more I'd love to throw at you, which is, sometimes we see with sort of food co-ops that they struggle to figure out how to share the tools to let others help them organize. The tools kind of end up in the board and a couple of volunteers, and they feel like they've tried to share them, but no one wants to do any work. And I'm wondering, if you have any thoughts on what's happening there. You talked about the tools and sharing the power, and I think some startups would say, but we tried to share the tools and nobody wants to do the work. And I wonder if you have any thoughts or response to that.
I always have. You want to go first, Shani? Or
No, you go ahead.
It's easy to say you tried, and I remember this little limerick. Well, not a limerick, but when I was a child, they used to say, "If at first you don't succeed, try and try again." And it seems kind of simple, but if you know you need to do it, you can't just say I've tried. And so, that's it. Like, well, keep trying. You don't want to try necessarily repeat the same thing over and over again. If you found something that didn't work, you did try that, now try something else. But in terms of what work people are willing to do, people regularly work. We're productive, and we're all capable and typically engage in and produce more than we need for ourselves in terms of the social value we create. We just live, sadly, in a economy and a society where a handful of people suck up the extra that we produce. But when we're building cooperatives, we try to make sure that the extra that we produce, the extra value that we put into it, remains in our community and remains in our hands. So there's a certain level of cynicism that some people will have about what it is you're asking them to do, as though you're trying to do it to get some benefit out of it. And again, if you organize with the capital model, that the main part of this business is, the surplus we can get out of it, then that is a reasonable way to look at it. This is business as usual. And it takes a while for people to go from all of the things they've gotten used to all of their lives to recognizing that it's possible to do things in a new way. So don't think that having tried it once and it didn't succeed is sufficient, and that people are incapable of recognizing the difference. Again, we build trust by keeping promises, and it takes time. That there's no shortcut to it. A friend of mine just quoted Hollis Watkins, who said there's no such thing as microwave relationships. You can't put it in, punch a button, and then it warms up. This takes the time that it takes, and it takes the trust building that it takes. And you build trust by keeping promises. You build relationships by working on things together. We need to think together in order to work on things together, and we build democracy by thinking together. And yeah, you tried it, and one thing you tried didn't work, so try something else along those lines. And I don't know enough of the specifics of the things that people have tried that didn't work, but I will assure you that there are new things to try, because we are infinitely creative. And so we can keep finding brand new things to try.
For me, that question raises questions for me. So if Jacqueline, you were talking about a board. So if I were on a board and the consensus was that, we've tried to share the tools and people don't want to do the work, I don't believe that people will not work for anything that they want. So I think that raises the question of, okay, is this truly something that this community wants? Because people will do work for things that they want. if the answer to that is yes, then as Ed was saying, then maybe these tools aren't the ones that are going to work for this community or this neighborhood. So we need to, and same thing Ed said, figure out which tools are going to work. And again, that's a two-way street. So I think there's a conversation that needs to be had. And when I hear boards sometimes say things like this, I become aware of a we-they dynamic. You know, it's we and then they, as opposed to that board is supposed to be part of the us. So members of that board should have connections to people in that community, that these tools are not, you know, people that aren't interested in doing the work, quote unquote, so that there's a conversation that can take place to help figure out what needs to be different so that this will work.
That's very helpful. And I'm glad this is recorded. We need to wrap up in the next few minutes. Anyone have a last comment or question they'd like to share before we do that?
Can I just say something about this group? I just love y'all because we come together and come up with such, I mean, the speakers just encourage such great ideas and conversation. And as you've shared your ideas, it speaks right to what Ed was saying about, you know, you can kind of sit in a room by yourself and think something up, but it's better. I don't know what you said, Ed, but it was something like, it's better when you have a lot of people in the room. And that's exactly what this is about. And I just wanted to share that with you. And thank you, Jacqueline, for doing this so intentionally that it's helpful.
All right. Well, I guess with that, we'll wrap up. Would you like to share any last thoughts, Ed or Sohnie?
Take it away, Ed.
I gave you everything I had. No.
I don't believe it, Ed.
Huh?
I said I don't believe that. I know you've got a lot more.
I just want to encourage us to remember our creative potential. Remember that every new situation is an opportunity. Remember that if we can seize the opportunity in this, then we can build things that will go beyond the kind of traditional existing institutions that are locked into old ways of doing things. Because we are united with the people, that our solidarity, mutual aid approaches to things, including cooperative development, are a key to being successful and harnessing the most powerful force that there is, and that is the unity and the will of the people to determine to do things. That all oppressive situations are at some point rooted in the consent of the people who are being damaged by it. And so we offer no consent. We will build what we need for ourselves and our communities, and we know we can do it. And we know it's not easy. So, you know, when we run into an obstacle, it's not a question of I've got to stop here. And somebody once said, and I love this, it's like, you know, when we get tired, we have to learn how to rest instead of quit. And so, you know, a lot of us got a lot of work to do, and it's challenging and it's hard. And some of us, you might need to slow down a little bit. Somebody, we have a situation where we're called upon to slow down. So take your time, take a deep breath, be creative, engage, know that, you know, we're being called upon to prepare the world for our children and our children's children and their children after them. A world that's better than the one that we found. And it's our responsibility to help build that. And these cooperative efforts are part of doing that. And so just go for it.
And organize, organize, organize.
Absolutely.
Everybody expects you to write that on the wall, wherever you sit when you're doing your organizing. All right, well, there's been a lot of appreciation in the chat, but if anyone wants to also join me in like giving some appreciation to Ed and Sohnie, we so appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. I usually throw up a final slide telling you about the next sessions. I'm just going to tell you because I know I'm about to lose y'all. We got 1 minute. But I do want to see you guys here Tuesday. I'm very excited. Ray Williams will be here with us. He's the operations manager at Seward Community Co-op in Minneapolis. And he's actually, because I know we're all startuppers, he's going to come talk about what it's been like to be an open co-op through this, what they've gotten right, what they've gotten wrong, how they've heard the community, how they've missed the community, how they've readjusted, and really talk about what it's like to live through this and serve a community once your store is open. And I think it's going to be a terrific session, a very different perspective, and I think very inspiring, and something you can even talk to your owners about to inspire them about why we want to get open, because we could be doing this work to serve the community. So that's on Tuesday. I hope you guys will join us. We just sent out the email yesterday with the list of the next like 10 sessions, because there was so much response that we are continuing the whole session through May. And Kim has just put on a session that's really about what happened today. I'll be putting that out, details on that today. It's actually about how to run a call tree of your owners, and what to ask them, and how to put together a list of resources to be ready to meet their needs. So that's gonna build off of what we talked about today, which is super exciting. And now I'll shut up. You guys have a wonderful day. Thanks again to Ed and Sohnie.
Thank you for inviting us to do this.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.